For their World Cup coverage, The Guardian managed to focus the conversation on the one issue that links together working-class sports fans from across the globe. From the cobbled streets of Ancoats to the slums of Rio de Janeiro, the single issue that is most prominent in the hearts and minds of anyone who dares to call himself a fan of the beautiful game. Feminism. Because everything has to always be about feminism. Not the kind of feminism that agitates for women's land rights in rural China or that campaigns against gender apartheid in the Middle East. No, fuck all that shit, no. This is the Guardian kind of feminism. Air conditioning, men sitting on trains and adverts with good-looking people on them. For truly, the plight of middle-class private schoolgirl princesses in first world countries is an issue that weighs heavily on the terraces, which is why you can hear the chanting at every game. The referee's a mansplainer. Who ate all the quinoa? Who ate all the quinoa? You cherished proud woman who won't be defined by her body shape. Who ate all the quinoa? Before we wind our merry way any further down this tortuous path of narcissism and social bewilderment, I should state, for the record, that I have abso-fucking-lutely zero interest in football. I simply can't fathom what anyone finds enjoyable about the whole sordid spectacle. A bunch of Ferrari-driving apes with expensive Spanish haircuts hoofing a leather sphere around a soggy field in between the odd hotel gang rape and racially motivated nightclub assault. However, despite my many years spent living abroad and my general disdain for nationalism and patriotism, I'm still fucking English, and football is something I can't really get away from because none of my mates can ever shut the fuck up about it. Like being a Chinese person trying to disassociate themselves from rice or a Frenchman denying his predilection for cowardice and infidelity. At some point, I had to simply admit defeat and accept that football is just something I'm going to have to engage with every now and again. So with that caveat in place, let's take a quick gander at this absolute gem concerning the Football World Cup from June 2014 by Sylvia Wakefield, who, incidentally, doesn't seem to have been invited back by The Guardian to produce another sodden lump of human shit flagrantly masquerading as learned discourse. Maybe this is a positive thing. Maybe the higher-ups at The Guardian realised that this entitled insanity was too much even for them, but I doubt it. Sylvia Wakefield is probably too busy fighting the important battles in life, like setting up a shelter for lesbian cats or petitioning the government to remove the sales tax on yoga pants. Fight the power, sister. Straight away, in the first paragraph, the hilarity commences. Still warm and fuzzy from the joy of the Olympics 2 years ago. I hanker to join an emotional ride with fellow spectators again. Well, if that's what the lady wants, then that's what she gets. You see, she'd never been interested in sports before, but she got swept up in the whole Olympics thing, and now the rest of the world really should reform itself to better suit her needs. Anything less would just be patriarchy. But the World Cup is different, as is the Tour de France. There's no Jessica Ennis or Victoria Pendleton to aspire to or root for, because these events include male competitors only. So, in order to convince her readers that she has managed to clamber atop the moral high ground, our buddy Silvia states right off the bat that she can only root for female competitors. She can only feel the joy of victory if it is shared with her own gender. She sounds like a fantastic person. This puts me in a quandary. Men's football is loved in Britain simply because the players are men. Well, what the shit fuck? Simply because the players are men. Simply? This is so true. She's really hit the fucking nail on the head here. Whenever I ask someone why they like watching football, I always get the same reply. Because they're men. There's nothing else you like about it? The skill, the competition, the passion? No, I just like looking at men. So presumably you'd be equally happy watching male figure skaters as long as they're men. Just like looking at men. What we have here is a textbook example of the 4K surround sound projection that's so common among regressives. It's the same reason why private school educated white journalists from rich families think that all other white people have led lives of secret handshakes, open doors and unfettered privilege, because that's been their experience in life. Sylvia states in her first paragraph that she can only root for an athlete if they're female, so she makes the wild assumption that the same must be true for men. She doesn't enjoy watching sports, she enjoys watching women, she enjoys the spectacle of a woman doing something that men traditionally enjoy. Sylvia has no passion for sport and she presumes everyone else feels the same way. She simply doesn't understand that gender is far more important to her than it is to the working class men she hopes to scold and finger wag at with this article, blog post, whatever the fuck it is. What she fails to realise is that sports fans don't see their passion as a jumping off board for their pet political hobby horse, they're simply just interested in the sport. Sylvia sees football as an opportunity to push her own political agenda, whereas football fans see football as only being about football. It's an end in itself. They don't need to insert a political angle because the game doesn't need anything extra to make them enjoy it. They already enjoy it, which is what makes them football fans and what makes Sylvia an entitled late-coming interloper. She goes on to say, "And what men like to do and like to watch is, de facto, culturally important." Yeah, mate, because the things that women like to do and watch, such as reality TV shows, royal babies, Justin Bieber and the fashion industry, they don't have any cultural importance whatsoever. The multi-billion-dollar global cosmetics industry, it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. I mean, it's not like there are thousands upon thousands of websites, magazines and TV channels explicitly dedicated to servicing women. And it's not like the gender-flipped versions of those media outlets get culturally abhorred and are only ever mentioned when the mainstream wants to demonise their male users. Nope. Only things men like have any cultural importance. You have to be pretty deep into a vacuum-sealed, ocean-floor hyper-echo chamber to believe something so easily disprovable. Either that or you just have to be a spoiled snowflake princess whose biggest hurdle to overcome in life was that time Daddy refused to buy her a second pony. I predict there will be little fuss made over the Women's World Cup in Canada next year. Well, you were fucking wrong, weren't you, Treacle? Lots and lots and lots and lots of coverage of the Women's World Cup. It trended heavily on Reddit, Twitter, Google, there was plenty of TV news coverage, Facebook was full of shit about it. But don't rush to pen that apology column too quickly. I know, a true professional like you sees it as a duty to go back and correct any mistakes with a heartfelt mea culpa. But let's be honest, that's not really the way you victimhood fetishists operate. If one of your batshit predictions has been proven false, well, that's just more evidence of a patriarchal conspiracy to undermine women by proving them wrong. Men all over the world most likely only watched and paid attention to the Women's World Cup in order to spite you. Fucking men, eh? In America, the men were so misogynistic that they watched the Women's World Cup in greater numbers than they'd watched any men's football game ever. It truly makes my blood boil. Is there no end to your hatred of women, America? For shame. For shame. There was a fuckboat's worth of coverage. Nothing by Sylvia Wakefield, though. Google can't seem to find any articles on the Women's World Cup penned by her. Funny that, isn't it? Is this the patriarchy again? Surely it couldn't be the case that Miss Wakefield didn't write anything about her beloved Women's World Cup. Surely she actually watched every second of it. Surely. Because if not, it would heavily suggest that she never gave even the shadow of a quantum fuck about football or women in sports, and she just wanted to have a fucking whinge and shit on men because it makes her feel good. So, do we women sideline ourselves by boycotting the games, or do we take up space and holler along because it's fun and exciting? Shall I actually enjoy myself, or should I instead focus on making myself bored and miserable so I have more things to complain about? Well, only the latter option offers the promise of money and the sweet public lucre of feigned victimhood, so this is one of those decisions that makes itself. What are frivolous emotions like joy and excitement compared to the opportunity to solicit pity while demonising working class men? You could argue that the FIFA World Cup is also ageist and disableist. Fucking cunt. Definitely, mate. You could definitely argue that. But only if you're a spastic of such historic proportions that you wanted your epoch-shattering ignorance to echo down throughout humanity's history, So that half a millennium from now, hunter-gatherer enclaves eking an ascetic existence out of the blasted wasteland beneath the depredations of a nuclear winter may one day huddle around a dwindling oil drum fire and take solace in the knowledge that at least they aren't as fucking dumb as you were. This one line is really the pièce de résistance of the entire blog post. Sylvia genuinely doesn't understand why there are no geriatric centre forwards arthritically shuffling towards the opposing goal as fast as their replacement hips will carry them, or why Barcelona don't have a quadriplegic playmaker, and so she makes what must be to someone with her worldview the logical jump to assuming it's all just about prejudice against old people and disabled people. I'm possibly being a little uncharitable here. Maybe she has actually thought about it. Maybe she dreams of super-powered hydroencephalitic headers launching balls at hypersonic speed towards the goal. Or maybe she thinks there's nothing in the FIFA bylaws preventing a team from parking 3 patients in iron lungs on the goal line. While it's hard to get a shot past a genius Spanish keeper, it's even more difficult trying to sneak the ball around millions of pounds worth of life-preserving, anachronistic medical machinery. But I think it's far more likely that she simply doesn't understand the reasons why people watch sport. Sylvia doesn't understand that sports fans like seeing the absolute best, the peak of human physical ability. She doesn't understand this because she's not a fan of sports. She's merely a fan of being a bossy little shit stirrer. She obviously doesn't get off on watching the best of the best compete against each other. She gets off on being a humorless scold, shouting at boys, telling the teacher on them because they are happily playing a game by themselves, and while she doesn't want to play the boys' game with them, she still feels like she has the right to stop them from enjoying themselves without her. Miss, the smelly boys have been rough and noisy and I don't like it. Make them stop or I'll scream and I'll scream and I'll scream. If Sylvia doesn't enjoy something, then no one else should be allowed to enjoy it because it's unfair on her. But she can't say that. She couldn't possibly be that honest without giving the game away. So instead she'll claim that football, that is, the game the boys are playing without her, is mean and evil and was set up exclusively to exclude newborn babies, dead people and fictional characters. Then she can prove this by the lack of newborn babies, dead people and fictional characters playing top-flight football. Why do you hate babies so much, football fans? I mean, just what the fuck is wrong with you evil cunts? Babies! Sylvia goes on to reveal some shocking, startling facts that will shake you to your core, like informing her readers that ruddy-cheeked sexagenarian former football players use rough, nasty language. Who knew? British men's football is so deeply sexist that even the boss of the Premier League engages in email conversations where women are referred to as gish. She goes on to talk about how football players have a nasty predilection for domestic violence. No, not that headline about US soccer star Hope Solo brutally assaulting a little boy and getting off scot-free because, I guess, patriarchy? But that's a solid fact. I mean, footballers are only ever violent towards women. They never get in fights with other men, never hack other men down on the pitch. I mean, as you may have guessed, I'm no fan of footballers. The kind of kid who has been fated as a hero since his early teens, has had the best looking women in the country throw themselves at him and regularly hears crowds of thousands lovingly chanting his name, isn't going to be the kind of kid who grows up level-headed and reasonable. Throw a bunch of money at that kid and it's a recipe for creating a total cunt. So I'm not going to waste any time stitching bulletproof vests to the barrel-dwelling fish our trusty blogger is spraying ammunition at. I'm just going to point out that the interpersonal misery spread by such arrogant, entitled wank trumpets is omnidirectional. Sylvia only thinks their violence is specifically directed towards women because when men experience violence, no one gives any part of a shit. Not the general brown matter, not the decorative chunk of sweet corn, not even the tapered end where you pinched off with a quick anal kegel. Not one single solitary part of any turd in the history of humanity, whether shat onto the floor, smeared on the door of an enemy, or snugly ensconced within the comforting confines of the semicolon, has ever been given to footballer violence experienced by men. The point I'm making isn't that we need to start weeping for the pitiable male victims of footballer violence, but that we should laugh at this insight into the mindset of someone who fetishizes female victimhood. Totally ignore anything bad that happens to men and focus intently on the same things happening to women. then weave it all into a supercilious tapestry of confirmation bias and self-pity. In fact, whenever there is men's football, just keep talking about women's football until everyone around you sees this men-focused football for the weird anachronism that it is. Yeah, I'm sure that'll win you lots of friends down the pub. Maybe after you've switched the barroom TV over to women's shot-putting or whatever, you could sit down with the grumpy men around you and brainstorm why society has a generally poor image of modern regressive feminism. I should probably address the central theme here, even though it is blindingly fucking obvious. But the reason why there weren't any women playing football in 2014 World Cup was because they weren't good enough. Homo sapiens sapiens is a sexually dimorphic species. Male bodies and female bodies are different. Male bodies have bigger muscles, denser bones, they produce less fatigue. I mean, this shouldn't be fucking news to anyone. Now, obviously this biological fact is less and less relevant as humanity moves forward and work moves from the fields to the offices, and this is very much a good thing. If it doesn't involve physical labour, women can do any job just as well, if not better, than any man. But the one area where physical prowess is still important is in sports. In fact, that's more or less the whole fucking point of sports. For a real-world example, the United States has the best women's soccer. Fuck you, America. Football. Football. For a real-world example, the United States has the best women's football team in the world. They regularly play against the US boys under-17s team, and generally they lose. Badly. And I want to add an important caveat here, as I know the defensive tactics of Sylvia's ilk all too well. No, Sylvia, I am not attacking you because you're a woman. You have said some immensely silly things, and your vagina doesn't place you beyond criticism. I mean, there's actually no fucking point in me saying this. I doubt there is anything that could convince our dear blogger that the criticism she receives is anything other than misogyny. It's a very common tactic for special snowflakes. All criticism is labelled harassment, and any mockery you receive based on the things you've said can just be dismissed on trumped-up charges of sexism. Ignoring all disagreement by declaring it the product of prejudice is a great way to avoid having to compete in the open marketplace of ideas, which is highly beneficial if your ideas are shit to start off with. However, it's also a guaranteed method of ensuring that bad ideas are never jettisoned and that progress is forever stunted. So to answer the big question, the enigma that proudly launched us on this epic journey, like a champagne bottle filled with cat piss being thrown against the rear wheel arch of a rusty Ford Cortina, is it anti-feminist to watch the World Cup? In these situations, I usually defer to Betteridge's law, which states that any time a headline contains a question, the answer is no. But that's a little lazy, isn't it? I couldn't do that to our Sylvia. I feel like we've been through a lot together. We've been on a journey. I don't want to oversell it, because the journey has been bollocks. It's been total bollocks from start to finish. Like squelching barefoot through an endless quagmire of severed human testicles. Hairy, sweat-drenched flesh orbs popping under heel and between toes as we stumbled forward, breaking our fall with outstretched hands that plunge into a writhing bouillabaisse of blood, sperm and empty wrinkled skin sacs. But a journey it has nevertheless been, and I feel we've developed a kinship, so I'm going to try and answer this question, not for all you ungrateful swine listening, but for Sylvia. I suppose it really depends on what you mean by feminism. I always thought I was a feminist because I agreed with the dictionary definition of feminism. The advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of equality of the sexes. A movement for granting women political, social and economic equality with men. Makes perfect sense. I mean, who the fuck would be against that? You can argue endlessly over who had it worse over the centuries. The women kept subservient yet safe and comfortable in the home, or the men breaking their backs in the field and bleeding out on a distant battleground somewhere. But these gender roles, regardless of how biologically imbued, did leave us with a pernicious idea that women are weak and fragile and they need to be protected. And there's been a great deal of work done by many feminists and many others over the years to shift society away from these previously ingrained beliefs. However, The Guardian kind of feminists want us to regress back to the stage where women are treated as sacred princesses, special snowflake meek little wallflowers, who can't stand up for themselves and they're bullied by the air conditioning and they can get upset by clapping and loud noises and they need to run to a safe space. If you're the kind of feminist who believes that women are just as tough and capable as men, then no, it's not anti-feminist to watch the World Cup. However, if you're the kind of feminist who believes that women are basically pussies, which entitles you to demand that the world be reordered to protect you from jumping at your own shadow, then the World Cup, like every other single stitch in the fabric of reality, is viciously anti-feminist. One final, very important point that needs to be made, and one that seemingly escaped Sylvia entirely, but women already enjoy football. Those English football fanatic friends I spoke about at the beginning, many of those people I was referring to were women. And now there's a fucking plot twist, you filthy degenerate misogynist. That's right, you cunts, you who's listening to this right now. I bet you thought I was talking about men, didn't you? You should be fucking ashamed of yourself, you heteronormative, cis-patriarchal, foamy clump of cunt brisket. And these female football fans I'm talking about, they aren't fans of football in any tacky, mid-90s ladette way. They aren't feigning interest to be one of the boys. They are seasoned ticket-holding superfans who support the same teams as their granddads, play five-a-side twice a week and obsess over stats. And as patronising as this blog post is to male football fans, it is far more fucking egregiously insulting to female football fans. Sylvia assumes they're the kind of fair-weather fad follower that she is. She assumes that their interest in football is a constant pallid cloud hanging over it, raining on their dreams of watching tits bounce around the pitch instead of bollocks. It's articles like this that really bring home how severely out of touch the sheltered rich kids at The Guardian are. Seriously, I suspect there are as yet uncontacted Stone Age tribes dwelling in the deepest recesses of the Congolese jungle who have a better grasp of 21st century British society than this fucking alien. For all the insight and genuine understanding in her blog, she might as well have just smeared a vaginal discharge stain over a blank piece of A4 paper, wafted it under Russ Bridges' nose and then collected her fat check to spend on cat food and blue hair dye. Although, despite having all the intellectual heft of a cunt smudge, this truly sensational, wildly ill-conceived diatribe was actually tons of fucking fun, and will ensure I keep reading. While Guardian's reputation as a respectable source of news and comment continues to plummet down to ever more hilarious levels of vapid banality, the clicks keep on coming, the business model continues to function, the echo chamber remains tightly sealed and the whole world gets a little more stupid.